Welcome to Whispers After Dark, the place where the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying come to life. Tonight, we're diving into the chilling legend of the Wendigo, which has haunted the forests of North America for centuries. A spirit of hunger, of madness, and of something far worse. Those who have seen it never live to tell the tale, or if they do, they are never the same again. Tonight, we bring you Horror in the Woods, The Curse of the Wendigo, a collection of eerie encounters that may make you think twice before stepping too deep into the woods. Before we begin, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another night of fear and mystery. Now, let's get on with the story. The Wendigo is one of the most terrifying creatures in North American folklore. Its origins deeply rooted in Algonquian Native American mythology. Whispers of this dreaded being have echoed through the tribes of the Great Lakes, the dense forests of Canada, and the vast wilderness of Minnesota for centuries. But the Wendigo is more than just a monster. It is a curse, a spirit of insatiable hunger born when a person succumbs to the ultimate taboo, cannibalism. Towering and gaunt, the Wendigo's skeletal frame appears stretched by its endless starvation. Its pale, frost-bitten skin clings tightly to its bones, and its hollow eyes burn with an eerie, otherworldly glow. But its most haunting feature is the twisted antlers that rise from its head, gnarled and jagged, like the branches of a cursed tree casting long, unnatural shadows in the moonlight. It moves with an unnatural grace, its presence bringing a chilling stillness to the air. Hidden deep within the forests, it lurks, watching, waiting, whispering in voices not its own. And when its hunger becomes unbearable, it hunts. Some say the Wendigo is nothing more than myth, but the following encounters may tell a different story. It was the winter of 1896. Elias Thatcher, a fur trapper, set up camp near Lake of the Woods in northern Minnesota. The snow was deep that year, and food was scarce. Elias had to stretch his food supplies. That day he had caught a couple of rabbits, and they were stewing in a pot hung over the fire in the fireplace. The blizzard raged outside, snow making its way through the cracks in his cabin. Firelight flickered. He was eating when he heard scratching at the door. A low, raspy voice called out, "Help me, please." Elias hesitated. No one should be out in a storm like this. He opened the door slightly, but there was nothing. Just the howling wind and the skeletal branches of the trees. He thought he saw a thin shadow moving in the trees. That night, he barely slept. The scratching came again, now at the windows. Through the window he saw a figure. It was tall, too tall. Its arms hung long and unnatural, its ribs pressing against gray, decayed flesh. Its eyes burned like embers in hollow sockets, flickering with an eerie light. A massive rack of antlers, twisted and gnarled like those of an ancient buck, crowned its head. And its mouth, lipless, frozen in a grotesque grin, revealing rows of jagged, needle-sharp teeth. Elias grabbed his rifle, but the thing was gone. He remembered the creature's mouth for the rest of his life. He stayed awake the rest of the night. The next morning, the blizzard had died down when he ventured out his door. It was then that he noticed the tracks in the snow, large, too large for a man. They circled his cabin in an unnatural, looping pattern. He followed the tracks, but they led to nowhere. They seemed to vanish into the deep, white snow. Elias didn't see the creature again, but sometimes at night he would hear an unearthly scream. Spring came a few weeks later. He packed up his furs and his belongings. Elias never spent another winter in those woods. Not long after, he married a woman named Martha and moved to Billings, Montana, drawn by the promise of the fur and gold trade. There, he opened a trading post and became a respected member of the community. For years, he kept his secret buried. It wasn't until he was an old man that he finally told his wife and son the story of that fateful winter. The disappearance of Adam Keller. In the summer of 1995, four friends, Adam Keller, his younger brother Jake, and a married couple, Brian and Lisa Sanford, set out on a hiking trip deep in Ontario, Canada's vast boreal forests. On the third night, after hours spent laughing around the campfire, they turned in early, eager for an early start the next morning. But when dawn arrived, Adam's sleeping bag was empty. His boots were still there. His flashlight lay outside the tent, its beam flickering weakly. They searched the entire day, calling his name, scouring the forest, but there were no footprints, no broken branches, no sign Adam had ever left the tent. That night, as they sat by the fire, exhaustion and fear settling in, they called out for him again, his name echoing into the trees. And then, something called back. Not Adam, not human. A voice, rasping, broken, distorted. Jake, Brian, help me. Please, I'm so cold. It sounded like Adam, but it wasn't. The voice was too low, too hollow, too wrong. Jake grabbed his flashlight, hands shaking, and aimed it toward the trees. That's when they saw it. A figure just beyond the firelight, horribly thin, its limbs bent at unnatural angles, a rack of twisted antlers rising from its head. Its mouth, lipless, stretched into a frozen, jagged grin, and its eyes, burning, watching. Lisa screamed. The thing moved. Jake snatched a burning log from the fire and hurled it, sparks bursting into the air. The figure was gone. By dawn, they ran, left everything behind. When they reached the nearest ranger station, they reported Adam's disappearance. A search team combed the area for days. They never found him, but the dogs did find shreds of his clothing. His jacket, torn to pieces, covered in blood. The official report said animal attack, but Jake, Brian, and Lisa never spoke about what they really saw. Somewhere, deep in that forest, something else had been watching. One of the most disturbing encounters is the disappearance of a survival guide and YouTube creator that was caught on video. In 2022, a survivalist named Eric Nolan vanished while documenting his solo expedition into the Montana wilderness. His YouTube recordings found weeks later began as expected, fishing, setting traps, talking to the camera with excitement. But on day 6, his tone changed. In the dim glow of his cabin lantern, he whispered to the camera, "Something's outside my cabin. I don't know what, but I think it's watching me." The next few days, his videos grew strange. His eyes looked hollow, his voice wavered. Paranoia crept in. By day 9, his final recording, Eric was no longer the same man. His face was drawn, terrified. "I can't eat. I haven't slept in days. I want to leave, but I'm afraid to hike out of here." He fell silent, listening. Then, barely above a breath, he whispered, "Something's outside my cabin. I don't know what it is, but it's watching me." And then a face appeared in the window behind him. Sunken, hollow, staring. Eric's breathing hitched. His hand clamped over his mouth. He didn't move, didn't even blink. Then a sound, not a knock, not a scratch, a whisper, right next to the camera. "You smell like hunger." The screen glitched. But the final footage showed Eric grabbing his rifle, throwing open the door, then running. His abandoned cabin was found weeks later. Eric Nolan was never seen again. Are these stories just legends? Elias, Adam, Eric, none of them ever existed. These stories aren't real, but the legend of the Wendigo, that is very real. Legends and truth are often hard to separate because every legend begins somewhere with something. Every myth has a beginning. Every whispered tale is born from something. For centuries, the Algonquian tribes have spoken of a creature lurking in the deep woods, a predator of hunger, a curse of the unforgiven. And even now, hikers and hunters still speak of shadows that move when they shouldn't, eyes that burn in the darkness, voices that don't belong. So we have to wonder, why do the stories always describe it the same way? If it's nothing more than a legend, why do people still claim to see it? And if you ever hear your name carried on the wind, in a voice that sounds almost familiar. Will you turn around? Thanks for watching this episode of Whispers After Dark. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think there's truth to the legends? And be sure to join me next time for another eerie journey into the unknown. Until then, stay curious, stay cautious, and beware of the whispers after dark.